I'm excited to talk with my guest today, Rhea Lana Riner. You are the founder and CEO of Rhea Lana's Children's Consignment Events, a national franchise with over 120 locations. What started as a living room clothing swap has become a multi-million-dollar business that empowers moms, builds community, and supports women in entrepreneurship. Rhea Lana, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Kay. It's a pleasure to be here.
I really am looking forward to talking to you about a business that you started over 30 years ago, in your living room. So, of course, I'm dying to hear how that all started.
Well, I was a young mom, had 3 small children, and my husband he was an engineer in the corporate world, and he was making a career move into nonprofit ministry work. So that's really what really kicked me into this gear of I needed to figure out how to help our family finances. And so I had a college degree, but it's not very useful like being a teacher or a nurse, So I was trying to be present with my kids if I could. And I had always loved secondhand shopping, the thrill of the hunt of the treasure. But there just weren't a lot of good secondhand shopping opportunities at that time. So really, I didn't have any business background, Kay. I just decided to invite some friends and sell each other's things just in my living room. So it started very humbly. And really, it was just because I was a mom and really wanted to help other moms.
Well, I have to say, I am noticing something about you. If you're not watching this, you look very fashionable. And you look like you do have an eye for fashion, although you commented on my orange scarf. But I've seen you in a couple settings, and it looks like that is a natural gift. You don't need to feel, that's just a thing, right? I think that you're probably very good at this. So it was something that seems to me, fit with who you really are and your gifts and interests. Is that true?
I would say fashion on a budget. Like I've always, and my mom probably, she's a Southern woman, and so she loved to look nice, but I didn't ever want to break the bank, so definitely love nice things, but also love being frugal at the same time. So I was trying to combine both of those values.
That's a great concept because I only have one child. Maybe it's because I couldn't afford all those clothes. Friends' clothes are expensive, and we used to do swaps, through my mom's groups and stuff. But as you said, back then consignment wasn't really that common, and so you had the brainchild to create this in your living room, and I'm sure it was really popular. How did it take off from there?
Well, the first one actually failed, if I have to be very honest. I am an introvert by nature. I had never had a business class, for sure never a marketing class. And so I'm kind of a perfectionist. And so I thought that if I just make everything perfect, so I rewashed and re-ironed all the clothes and it all looked really beautiful. The problem is nobody came. So it was a learning experience, very humbling. I had 11 consigners. Those are moms that were selling their things. And I called all 11 of them and said, can I please try one more time? Would you give me a chance? And so then I had to figure out that I'm going to have to put myself out there. I had to learn how to invite people and connect. And so that was one of my first lessons is I did have to learn to kind of take a risk, invite people, tell them about what I was offering. And so that's really how it started. But then after that, it really did take off because I realized there are so many moms out there just like me. They loved to dress their kids in nice things, but it's expensive, and then kids grow through things so quickly. And so how could we create this high quality experience? And one thing that we've always loved is that we guaranteed every item, because that's what I saw was missing between consignment stores or, just garage sales. We were trying to kind of thread that needle. Like we wanted a mom to have a report. It would show everything that she sold and for how much. And so it was a very authentic, trusted experience. And if we lost something, we would pay for it. It's called being guaranteed. So we wanted moms to be able to bring us their expensive things that they had bought for their children and know that we would take good care of them and we would sell them for them.
Right. We all have great memories of our kids in those clothes. So the thought that you will treat them with love and care, that makes sense to me. That would be important. I love how your business aligns with your values. We'll talk about personal branding a little bit later, but you wanted to bring income into your household and you wanted to be with your kids. You wanted to be a mom. That was the most important thing to you, I'm sure. So this seems like it was really a good fit. The introvert part is interesting because I'm not an introvert, probably no surprise, but I know that even for me, it's hard sometimes to put myself out there. So, and then when you do it, the more you do it, I'm sure you found the easier it gets. It might never be totally easy.
Yeah, it's true. You do, it's like using these muscles you don't know you have until you have to use them. And then you realize, oh, I can do more than I thought. And I can do this thing, but you sometimes sort of have to be forced out there outside of our comfort zones of those things that come naturally to us.
And that's good for us. That's good for us because that's the way you grow. And so we start with other moms in your living room. You're sharing clothes, however that worked. How has that grown? You are now a franchise company, 120 locations and growing. So how did that transition happen?
Well, one of the early things that we did is that we computerized it. And my husband actually wrote our software, which is not a big deal now. We all carry computers around in our hand with our phones, right? But in the this was 1997. And my stay-at-home mom's friend, no one even had a computer in our homes. And I remember my husband saying, Rhea Lana, you should computerize this. And so we joked that we probably had the only barcoded garage sale in the world at that time in 1997. So we were scanning tags but it helped us. That's kind of was our niche, is that we've always been able to have this high quality experience. And so I really cared about having excellence in the operations. And as we would grow and we'd have these problems, then my husband would be able to write our software to solve these problems for us. So it was in my home for the first couple of years. And then the neighbors complained because we had too much traffic and moms were loving it. It was growing very slowly. Honestly, I didn't have a lot of money to invest. So it really was just kind of this side thing that I was growing slowly, but the demand was growing. And so then we began to look for empty retail spaces around town. And it's always been just a pop-up event. It's not a store. It's just a pop-up event. And we love that. We do it once in the fall, once in the spring. So moms can just clear out a lot at one time. But it did continue to grow. And then I live in central Arkansas, outside of Little Rock. And so I had families in Little Rock that were driving over an hour and they said, Rhea Lana, would you come do this in Little Rock? And so that was my first step of trying to figure out if I had a model that was duplicatable. And so we went and I remember when I was thinking about expanding to Little Rock, a lot of the naysayers would say, oh, you're going to hurt your business. If you open one there, it's going to take all your customers and it's going to hurt you. And I just really felt like, honestly, it would help me. It was a risk. And again, we didn't have a lot of money. We always had to bootstrap it. So I was saving the money that I was making. And as a family, we were living frugally. We weren't buying new cars or taking vacations or buying new furniture. We were living frugally so that then I could take that money and then expand into Little Rock. And so then once I saw that one grow, I was hoping that my husband would go back into the corporate world. And he was realizing he loved his nonprofit work. And I was thinking, well, then I need to think about long-term for our family. And it just felt like this was a unique model that maybe I should think about franchising. I will tell you this though, Kay, I didn't have the money to hire some consultant. So I just bought the book, Franchising for Dummies. I'd take my kids to the community pool and I'd have my highlighter and I would just go through it because I had no idea if anybody would even buy a franchise, so I didn't want to risk a lot of money. But about that time, my sister lives about 3 hours from here. And so she's about 10 years younger. And I knew I bossed her around her whole life. And so if she was our first test franchise, I figured, okay, if she can do it, then maybe we can help other people duplicate this. So that is how the franchising aspect got off the ground.
It's encouraging to hear that you did this on very little money because that's, I'm sure, giving hope to anybody listening who wants to start a business but doesn't have a big bankroll or a sugar daddy, whatever.
But you do have to be frugal. And sometimes I see some folks that are starting businesses that are still trying to spend all this money personally. And you can't do both though, at least if you have limited resources. You've got, it's all kind of comes out of the same pot if you're an entrepreneur. And that is one mistake I see, even in our franchise owners, like you got to put money into a business if you want to grow it. And sometimes that does mean sacrifice at the personal level until the thing has a life of its own.
That's a great point. And as a 30 plus entrepreneur myself, yes, we started out with some very lean years, and yes, some of those compromises that you have to make. And if all goes well, you get to enjoy plenty once it takes off and becomes a success. Did you have a dream? I know from the beginning, it doesn't sound like you had a dream, but then by the time that you got that book, which I love this franchises for dummies, were you dreaming big at that point, or did it kind of just happen and morph along?
To be honest, I did not have a big dream. My husband, he kept saying, "What's your goal? What's your goal? You need a goal." And I honestly didn't have a big goal. I'm not super visionary, but I am competitive and I wanted to be the best. So I think my goal was I want to build something that's the best, better than anybody out there so that I can compete on the market. And if anybody was to ever compare, we would always come out on top. So that's where I was really motivated, was to develop myself because I was so green. Like I didn't know anything about business. And so I wanted to develop myself as a leader and then come up with this model that was amazing. And my goal was, and I also in franchising, we actually have a very generous model where we give back a lot more to franchisees than typical franchise models. And my goal with that was if we could make this very profitable and it still looks and a franchisee has a wonderful experience, then this thing's going to sell itself. So I was thinking more along those lines than some number out there that I wanted to achieve. I just felt like if I could build something great, if it would be founded on our values, if we were consistent, if we treated people well, then it would grow at whatever pace it was meant to grow.
That makes a lot of sense. My husband likes to say there are many roads to the top of the mountain. So yes, there are some people that say, oh, you've got to have your vision and your dream and your vision board. And sometimes it happens organically or whatever the way that we call what happened to you. But I like the fact that even though you say you're competitive, and I'm sure you are, but you also want to support the women who you work with, your franchisees, your customers. Like you said, money back guarantee. That reminds me of the old Nordstrom model where they took tires back.
Yes.
So that says a lot about your business and your company and your brand. So that makes a great segue into branding because it's something else that you mentioned that you'd like to talk about. And of course, is very close to my heart because Steve, my husband, and I just wrote this book, Uncopyable You, all about your personal brand and how important it is to be authentic. So talk to me about your brand and how that's fit into your path.
When I started, my name was not my brand. It was the Children's Clothing Exchange. And so it was actually several years in that it was my husband that said, Rhea Lana, you should name this after you. Nobody will ever copy it. Well, never in a million years did I think it would grow into a big brand. I don't know that I would have done it that way. It sort of made sense at the time. So it was definitely interesting to have your brand be your name. But for me, it worked really well because it just kept it authentic. And I'm out there. If my name is out there, then I really care about what's happening. And so it helps us, our whole company, to stay true to our values. And but I will say this, now I've been doing this for a number of years. And about 6 years ago, I did hit a point where I sort of hit a wall emotionally. And I didn't really know what was happening, but it was kind of a rough patch, if I have to be honest. And as I did some good therapy, which I encourage everybody to do, sometimes you just need some professional help. And she has become a good friend, but she kind of said, Rhea Lana, you've kind of lost the separation between Rhea Lana's and Rhea Lana, the person. And so I kind of had to work through that because as an introvert, and I live in kind of a small community, I'd kind of lost obscurity, like, wherever I would go or I'd hand over my credit card, like it was, and my name's on billboards, it's like, you don't long for those things when you're an introvert. And so I had to get to where I could kind of separate and be Rhea Lana, the person, and the grandma and the wife and the mom, and then Rhea Lana's the business. So that's just been part of my personal journey, that it's been important to keep those two things separate while still being this, overachiever and wanting to grow my business, Rhea Lana's, but just remembering that Rhea Lana is a real person with real needs. And so, but I wouldn't trade it, and I'm glad we've done it. And it's been worked well for us.
I think the fact that it's called Rhea Lana's versus the exchange, the consignment exchange, That is a totally different feeling. And you put your name behind something. Obviously that is a reflection on you. So that is, I think it was a very good decision. As you said, it also came with some downsides that you wouldn't have anticipated. I sometimes think of the big stars, not that you're not a big star, but movie stars.
I'm definitely not.
Flashbulbs all the time, but how it must be to never be able to be anonymous and never be able to have a moment's peace and quiet. Hey there. This podcast is meant to give you an uncopyable advantage. If you're ready to jump on the fast track, go to beuncopyable.com/K. You'll get the scoop on my books, webinars, personal consulting, and our Moose Market. It's all designed to help you stand out, sell more, grow your business and brand in a way that's truly uncopyable. Once again, that's beuncopyable.com/K. Now, back to the show. I just heard the funny comedy clip from Kevin Hart, the comedian, and someone had asked him for his autograph, and he was going into the bathroom, and he said, "Yes, I'll give you my autograph, but please wait outside." And so he went in, he said he did his business, and he opens up the door of the stall, and that guy is standing right there outside the stall. So I thought, wow, it gets to that level, right?
Well,
so I don't
you do. And I think, I have thought about those folks that are truly famous a lot, because I'm just sort of, a small town, but you walk into a restaurant or you go into Sam's and people know the name. And sometimes they don't even know that I'm a person, which I kind of like it when they don't know I'm a person. Out there, a lot of times people know the brand, but they don't know that a person is behind that brand. So it's, again, just an interesting part of the journey.
That is very interesting. So talk a little bit more about your personal brand, how you communicate, I guess, your values and who you are to your franchisees and your customers.
Well, we do have a list of values. We have about 9, and we have a mission statement, and we just talk about it a lot of what is important to our company, what drives our decision making. We have filters and one of the things I actually love is there's a principle called the Golden Rule that's actually started in the Bible, that talks about treating other people, put yourself in their position and how would you want to be treated. And so we talk about that, as our consignors, how would they want to be treated? Our shoppers, how would they want to be treated? If I was that franchisee, how would I want to be treated? So I do think that when you put yourself in the other person's position, it just helps you to have a greater perspective, and I think be more gracious when you're thinking about your brand and how you want to serve your customers out there, and how you want to be perceived as a brand, And so I think when your values are all tied into that, it helps you have this personal brand that's authentic, it's trusted, it's consistent. Hopefully when I think about my pop-up events, my hope is that a customer is going to get the same experience no matter where they are, whether they're in California or Georgia, and it's reflective on our values. And so it's for me, it is a personal brand, but then it expands into these pop-up events that we host.
The word that comes to mind is authenticity. It's the buzzword of the day, but you are being authentic. Of course, the Golden Rule. I hope everyone who is listening at least knows that the Golden Rule: treat others as you would like to be treated. And I talk about this in sales as it refers to sales or fits with sales, because a lot of times, yes, salespeople will try to sell someone and give them the hard sell, and yet they would never want to buy like that. So thinking about putting yourself in the customer's shoes, I say in the customer's steel-toe boots, because I have a whole story in my book about being muffler mama, and really wanting to understand the customer. And if you really want to help them succeed and you're doing it in a way that's true to your values, that's the best. And of course, people sometimes have a number on their head, or like you have to make money, you have to make a profit. So you need to balance those things. Sounds like you've done that very well, and that brings in your franchisees that are very much in alignment with who you are. So let's talk about advice that you would give to women entrepreneurs. We've talked about some of the advice that you would give. And maybe one of the pieces of advice is to call Rhea Lana and find out how you can start your own franchise. And I know
We'd love that.
Yes. You do offer a free call, and we'll talk about that later in the call. But that would be a great way, it sounds like, to explore this whole, whether this is right for you. If you are a woman and it sounds interesting. Do you have any men, I should ask, do you have any men that are doing this?
Men honestly play mostly a supportive role. I mean, it is a family business like any business, and so, but for the face of the business, it's currently all women. They're moms, grandmoms. Sometimes it's a partnership and a mom and a sister that will go in together. But it's a women-owned business.
That's fine. And your husband obviously played an integral part. Hope he listens to this episode and hears all the shout outs you give to him. Sounds like well-deserved. So talk about when you're selling in a crowded market, and even maybe the consignment market is probably much more crowded than it used to be. So how do you stand out and differentiate yourself?
Well, I just would think any entrepreneur, first of all, really has to know their customer. You have to know your market. And because I was that mom, I know what moms are facing. Now I'm older. I'm 60 now. But I've got daughters and it's important that we're always connecting with that next generation of moms. For us, it's the moms because that's our customers. But what are their needs? What are their values? How can we meet those needs? And I think the better that we meet needs, the more that we are differentiated in our market. And I think also the more committed that we are to customer service, like we really want to do things well. Well, at our events, again, we have these huge events that I still run, our large flagship event, and it's massive. And we'll have almost 10,000 shoppers come through. And so, we have registers set up and we're selling like 250,000 items. Anyway, so there's a lot of operations that go on. So sometimes we'll have some customers come through and they'll go, "You guys are just like Chick-fil-A, And for us, that's like this huge compliment because that means we've done operations well and we've done customer service well. And so I think if we can do both of those things really well in whatever industry anyone is in, then it differentiates yourself because shopper or any customers out there, we're looking for excellence, aren't we? Okay. People want to be served well. We have high standards. And so if we can meet those expectations, that is what will differentiate us, in my opinion.
I think you have a huge opportunity now because customer service is not very good.
Oh, my word.
Yeah. Something.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but listen.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I was in a restaurant. I'm not going to say the name of it, but it just reminded me. I walked in, there was no one to greet me. You had to order your food on this computer robot thing. Then when it's ready, the person that handed me the food, I wasn't even sure if my food was, and it was a terrible experience. And it brought to mind, my word, I think that our events will stay in business just because we look people in the eye and we greet them and we ask them how their day was. So I'm sorry to interrupt. It just brought this thing like, people need to understand that if they could have a business that connects with people and talks and people look eye to eye, I think that's an advantage.
It is an advantage. And I think what you described is the perfect example of the fact that the bar has been lowered. The bar has been lowered. And so companies trying to save money, all the different reasons to be more efficient without people, from the U-scan at the checkout, and even McDonald's now, they have an app. I eat at McDonald's quite a bit. They have an app, or you go inside, you have to order from a kiosk. And this is during a time, especially post-pandemic, when we are craving connection. We are craving that person that looks us in the eye and has a human connection. So for you listening, Rhea Lana did this earlier when maybe it wasn't quite as big a deal, but it's always been a big deal. People do business with people. So now is your opportunity. You listening, me and Rhea Lana, really take advantage of the fact that it's not hard to stand out from the competition. That maybe is oversimplifying, but you get the point. So tell me about the flagship events. Then you have the franchisees, right? When and where do you have your big events?
Well, this is actually the original event that started in my living room. So I have continued to run this flagship event in Central Arkansas. And then I also run our corporate office that serves all of our franchise owners in about 26 states. So I live and work here. And yes, I still love running our flagship event because it's like the laboratory. It keeps me working, and I'm learning how to still lead teams and make sure our operations are smooth and make sure we're staying connected with the next generation. So I do think that's what makes me a good CEO. Or I know that I'm good, but it helps give me the tools I need to run my company, I guess, because I want to still be in the laboratory. I want to still be learning. I want to know what my customers are asking for, where we're winning, where we're falling short, so that we can improve. So, and again, it's my heart. It's what I love doing, and I still love watching families who find so much joy getting things for their children that they normally wouldn't be able to afford. And it doesn't take long for me to put myself back in that place of when I was that young mom and could barely afford things for my kids. And it just made me so proud of myself when I could give them that beautiful dress or that toy or whatever it was. And so I just love being able to give that value to other families and that experience.
What a fantastic business model. This just sounds like a very happy situation. And of course, my background, I sold mufflers and catalytic converters, which weren't very fun, but I loved the people. I dealt with family businesses. They were putting their money on the line. And so it's always about the people, although you have a really fun product too. And I know that it makes not only your franchisees, but also your customers feel important, that you take the time to be there, that you want to interact and be present with them. So I think that also speaks to your brand. You're staying authentic to that concept. In the few minutes we have left, I am curious. So which parts of the country? I'm in the Northwest. I'm in Seattle. You're in Arkansas. Where are your franchisees located mostly?
Well, we just trickled out from Arkansas. So I would say we're heavily in, Kansas and Texas, but we're in Louisiana and Georgia and Virginia and Illinois. We're in California. We're in Utah. We're in Arizona. So about 26 states. We're all over, but we're growing. I would say we're more heavy in the South, but we are looking to grow north and coast to coast. And what I've learned is, moms might look a little, years ago, I'll tell this one little story. Years ago, when I was first launching and I was wearing every hat and doing everything, I was launching my franchises. And so one day I got on an airplane and I went to Dallas and I launched a franchise in Dallas. And women in Dallas have big hair, lots of jewelry, no personal space, And so I got that franchise launched. I got on a plane and I went up to Chicago, Illinois. And I launched that, and women and moms there are a little different, like not as much jewelry and makeup, a little more simple hair, a little more personal space. So, the culture, but moms are still the same, no matter where you live in this country or the world. But we might have some cultural differences, but moms love their families. And so that's what our company is built around is we know that moms will do anything for their families and for their kids. And so, but culturally, it might look a little different. And so that was one of the biggest lessons I've learned in franchising is our model still works. We might just have to tweak it a little bit depending on the state and the market that we're in.
Great points. Yes, as a mom of one, I was one and done, but yes, we did everything for our daughter. We are a golfing family. She ended up getting a college golf scholarship because I'll give her some of the credit. She's a pretty good golfer. But we took her all over the country to go to tournaments and give her lessons and do everything we could for her success. And so, yes, the vast majority of parents, we would love to do anything for our children, and including making them look good, because also that makes you feel good, right? Even no matter what age. I think even when I was 3, I still remember loving pretty dresses.
It's true. We love it when our kids look good. I mean, we'll buy them things before us. And so that's, again, part of why this model started is moms take great pride in making sure their kids look good and have all the opportunities like you did for your daughter and her golfing. That's what we do.
So in just the few notes, you can probably tell I'm taking notes. You started a business that was really true to your goal to be with your kids, your goal to do right by them, and take very good care of them to be part of their lives. You said you really worked hard. You even had to fight the fact that you're an introvert. So, but your work ethic is obviously very strong. And as you said, don't spend it all, especially in the beginning. You've got to be able to reinvest and, of course, also survive the ups and downs, which I'm sure over 30 years you've had some. Yes. So let me give you a moment. Let me give you a moment to tell us how we can schedule a time to talk with you if we're interested in learning more about becoming a franchisee for Rhea Lana.
Oh, well, thanks, Kay. Yes, you can find me. We're all over social media, but you can go to our website. It's rhealana.com/podcast. And you can just fill out that info form, and we would love to schedule that with you. But it could be even if you're not interested in franchising. If you just want to talk about your entrepreneurial journey, we've got some leadership resources. I would just love to be an encouragement to your audience in any way that I can, and just help women find their way, find their voice in their own journey.
Okay, so head to the website. I will put that link in the show notes. So I want to just say thank you so much for being on the show and sharing all of that with us.
Thank you, Kay. It's been such a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Uncopyable Women in Business. If you enjoyed it, please follow, rate, and review the show. And be sure to review. Thanks for listening to this episode of Uncopyable Women in Business. If you enjoyed it, please follow, rate, and review the show. And be sure to visit beuncopyable.com/K. Always remember, be uncopyable.